Sunday, January 10th, 2021. This is All About Your Benjamins and your weekly mixtape and week in review video. Hope you had a great week despite all of the craziness that went on in our country. We are here today, looking forward. Optimism always wins. So let's get to the headlines that may or may not be impacting your financial plan and portfolio. And we'll start in D.C. A lot of excitement, good and bad, in D.C. this week. We start with the rioting that went on at the Capitol on the day that Congress is supposed to certify that Joe Biden won the election through the Electoral College. So as you already know, don't need to rehash what happened, but it was a scary sight, not our country's finest moment, and a day that will probably be remembered and go down in history as an ugly day. But at the end of the day, Congress was able to come back despite that chaos and solidify the vote, which I do think was important just from a standpoint of showing that intimidation and acting out like that is not going to stop the business that needs to be done. I feel like if Congress had not gone back, it would have allowed those people to win, even though they really lost, and slow things down and show that we can be intimidated. And I think we have to stay strong, even when it's scary, to get things done. So we got the confirmation that we had all expected. We also had the runoffs votes down in Georgia, and that went to the Democrats, which was to be expected as well, given all of the polling and leading up to it. So a lot of political stuff, which you all know I'm not a huge fan of. I hate it mainly because of the divisiveness that comes out of it, the us versus them mentality that starts with the politicians. It starts in D.C., it starts on the local level, but then you see how it spins down to citizens. How we have two camps that hate each other, want to fight each other, and it's us versus them rather than us coming together as a country as a whole. We can have differences, not saying that we can't disagree with the other side, but to have events like we saw this week, to have things that you see on social media, people just spewing venom at the other side, if you will, is just disheartening. And it all comes back to politics and the way things are set up, and it just really, really frustrates me. So, that's what went on in D.C., as you already know. We had the confirmation of Biden. We had the voting down in Georgia, the runoffs going to the Democrats. And then after all of that, we have talk of impeachment again of President Trump in the last few days of his term. You also had talks of the 25th Amendment being invoked, which would basically remove him from office. And that did not happen on the day of all the chaos. Who knows what's going to happen over the last 10 days. Hopefully it's just calm and quiet. I feel like that's what we need. And hopefully the next administration kind of just learns from that as well and goes in, does what needs to be done, but also kind of just does it quietly rather than bringing all of this attention. And I think that quietness out of D.C. may allow us to move forward as a country and begin to heal and go back to seeing each other with our differences, but seeing each other as people. The golden rule is what we should all be living by. It seems so easy, but yet it's so hard. Just thinking of how you would want to be treated in any situation would be good for everybody rather than just letting emotions and hate overcome. And it's not the whole country, but I do see more and more of it just on social media feeds and conversations that you overhear in the office building and things of that sort. So not our finest moment, but we'll move forward. And it's not the first time we've had ugliness in our country, and we continue to move forward. So I'm optimistic that this is just a blip on the radar, an ugly blip, but we'll move forward. Moving forward, the next big thing, no surprise, is COVID. Numbers driving up. Here in where I'm at in Fishers, I'm nervous that the kids are not going to be going back to school. Our school board is voting on it in a few days, and they have been very quick to keep the kids at home. And numbers are ticking up. My wife was looking at a chart from around the area, and the numbers when the boys were out of school in August were, let's say, down here, and where they are today are up here, which does not make us feel optimistic that they're going to be going back to school next week as they were supposed to. So numbers keep on ticking up. Obviously, it's regional, but here in our area, it's going up. And I talked about it before, but inner circle getting closer and closer to people that I know who have had COVID. And I had the first person within my circle of people that I know who lost a family member to COVID. So a young man I went to middle school with, his mom passed away, I saw on social media from COVID. So it keeps on getting closer and closer, more and more real. But the numbers ticking up, which spills over into the economy. So we've been tracking jobs, unemployment over the last year. I always mention it, but with the increase of COVID numbers and businesses being shut down and cities being shut down or curfews being put in place, the unemployment numbers are not as positive as they were. So we had our first month of job losses. There were 140,000 jobs that were cut in December. Unemployment stayed around 6.7%. The peak was 14%, so we're still better off than we were when it began. But I talked about this over the months as we saw numbers, and even in the summer and in fall, begin to tick up, just wondering what's that going to mean. With all that negativity, though, around the numbers ticking up and jobs going away, there is a lot of positivity going out there. And one thing I wanted to bring light to was the fund that David Portnoy, the founder of Barstool Sports, is putting together. And we actually had a couple businesses locally, I saw it on the news last night, that were able to get some support from him. But he's raised over $21 million for small business, in particular restaurants, from his fans and from athletes and from collaborating with other celebrities. And they're giving those funds to restaurants to try to keep them open since they're being forced to shut down in some areas. In other cases, just slowing business because of everything going on. So while you see all of this bad, you see other people rising up in roles of leadership, even if it's not official leadership, to try to help others and do good work. So I always try to find the silver lining. I feel like life is much more enjoyable when you're able to see the good, not ignore, not diminish the bad that's going on, but realize that there is more good than bad out there, and good will ultimately win. Just got to focus on those and encourage those and support those, and go out and do things on your own as well that are in that same vein. So as I ramble on, numbers of COVID ticking up, jobs coming down. What does that mean? We'll have to see if the vaccine rollout gets any better over the coming months to see if that helps out as well. So two little investment-related things. One, going into right now, if you are an international investor, this is something you want to pay attention to, especially if you invest in Chinese stocks. So there is a movement, and there already have been some Chinese stocks that have been banned in the U.S. But right now, the U.S. is currently weighing whether or not they're going to ban Alibaba and Tencent from being traded in the U.S. as stocks. And that's a big deal only because those are pretty big companies. Alibaba, if you're not familiar with it, is basically like an Amazon, but even greater in China. And the founder, Jack Ma, of Alibaba is nowhere to be seen over the last couple of months. Hopefully he is just laying low and nothing more than that. But you start to see the reach that the government has in China. And even though we may not be perfect here, we can compare here that you have one of the world's most wealthiest people, the richest men in the world, being silenced because of something that he said about the government over there. But with all of that going on, if you are an investor in Alibaba or Tencent, what does that mean to you? What happens to the investments? Those are things you want to look into and observe. And that's one of the things that even with large companies we feel to be safe because of their size and everybody knows about them, there's still risk when you're investing in individual securities. So just making sure you understand what it is that you own, staying up to date with headlines around it, and in this case, having a game plan for if they are banned, what are you going to do? Do you want to wait to see if they do get banned? But it's just an interesting dynamic. The final headline, a little bit more light, putting us in a world that none of us, very few of us will ever live in. Elon Musk, the founder of Tesla, SpaceX, is now the world's richest person. With Tesla's run-up in stock price, he has surpassed Jeff Bezos as the richest person in the world. And I also wonder, there's an asset class out there I'm sure you're hearing about a lot right now, Bitcoin. I wonder if Elon Musk owns Bitcoin, and if he does, how much, and where does that put him in this world ranking? Does it give him more? Does he have very little? Does he have none? I know that he has spoken on Twitter about not believing in it, but also talking about it. You never know with him, but there's this potential that he has this money that we don't even know about because Bitcoin's more private. So anyways, I just thought it was interesting to talk about that again. It puts us in a conversation of an area most of us will never experience, being even close to the world's richest person. But it does bring me to one more thing I kind of wanted to get on my soapbox, if you will, a little bit. Just talking about, there's this separation between Elon Musk and us. But I think 2020 and going into 2021, the separation of class, the wealth gap that's out there, we are seeing widen. And I've mentioned this before, but where I wanted to go to next is not only are we seeing with adults and families with wealth, the wealth gap widening, we're seeing it on a younger level when it comes to education. I look at particularly Leo. So Leo is my 8-year-old and he's in 2nd grade. And I look at the struggle that he's having at home with school, knowing that he has 2 parents that are committed to helping him. We're fortunate to be in a position where one of us can be home to help them with e-learning. And I think about all the kids that their parents can't, whether they be in a single family home and mom or dad has to be working, or the parents just don't care, all these different dynamics. So you have these kids who have support. They live in a good school corporation. They have great teachers. And you have kids on the other end. And while the wealth gap grows, I think we can call it an education gap, a support gap, whatever you want to call it, is going to be growing as well. And we're going to see the potential fallout from this years and years down the road when you have kids that did not have good education in the last couple of years. And what does that do to their growth? And does that, from a confidence level, impact their future education as well? And on the other end, you have kids that are able to have tutors and have very involved parents, or happen to be in a school corporation that puts them in school where they can be in the environment they need to be in, and they get better. So my fear in all of this is we focus on unemployment, we focus on the stock market, we focus on businesses, and that's all very, very important. But if we think about the future, I don't know how many people are focusing on what's happening at the educational level of younger kids and that gap that's starting to widen there, and what does that mean for the future. So I don't like to identify problems where I don't have the answer. I don't have the answer to this. I don't know if anybody out there does, but it was something I wanted to bring up just to put on the radar for people to think about. Is, we've got wealth gap, now we're having education gap at very, very young levels. Even think about kindergarten. I'm talking about 2nd grade. Think about kindergarten. That level of development that goes on right there, and their kids are not being able to get that attention from the teachers that they need, to be around their peers to help them out as well. I just think that this is an overlooked long-term impact that we're not talking about a lot because we live so much in the moment, and money is so important, and finances, but there's this other area that's out there. And again, I don't have the answer. I hate bringing up problems without a solution, but sometimes bringing it up at least starts the conversation. So that's it. A little bit of a ramble today. Hope you have a great rest of your weekend. Have a great week. I will see you all next week in next week's Week in Review. Be sure to subscribe and like. If you're listening on the podcast, head over to YouTube to watch the video. If you're watching on YouTube, head over to allaboutyourbenjamins.com to read the mixtape. Subscribe again, like, share, all those fun, good things I'm not good at asking about. Have a great day, and we'll see you in the next episode.